Hey, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior shine in their light. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Victor Rosa. Victor is not only the superintendent of schools in California, but he's also family and just an all-around great guy. And I'm thrilled that he came on today. So, Victor, I appreciate you joining me, and thank you so much.
I'm honored. I appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Well, you were definitely on my top 100 when I set my list out back last December. So, I appreciate getting the chance to speak with you. Victor, I mentioned that your family, your cousin is my life partner, and but you guys grew up in a traditional Portuguese family. And for those that aren't familiar, Portuguese is a lot like Italian, loud, boisterous. I think you're born with Jesus's cross on your head when you enter the womb or
Pretty
exit
much.
the womb, and a very family-oriented, giving, loving family, but very gregarious, very almost like a Jewish family where they, in my experience in the last 8 years, ride the guilt train a lot. They put a lot of that on the family members. So as you were growing up in that environment, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
There are 6 of us total, so 5 brothers and sisters. Originally 8, but I lost my 2 oldest siblings when they were little. I never knew them.
Okay.
But yeah, my mom, in essence, had 8 kids, but 6 left. So
Wow. Yeah, that's a big thing. I know I've been to some family reunions and things, and there's like, cousins and uncles and aunts on end. But what I love about your family is that you guys all still show love and support, even amongst all the other things that I previously said. What was it like for you growing up in that kind of environment?
I guess sometimes when you don't know the difference, you don't know the difference. I grew up pretty much on a small ranch here in Hanford, California. And kind of my parents' dream when they immigrated from the Azores to the East Coast of Massachusetts, had never seen snow before, had never experienced any of those sort of things, and go to Massachusetts of all places from this beautiful island. And so they only lasted in Massachusetts for about 8 years, and my dad needed some warmth and a warmer climate. So they came to California, and honestly, it was a really great experience. I mean, when you grow up out in the country, we had every kind of animal, we had every kind of opportunity. My dad didn't put a lot of limits on us, at least the boys for that, on what we wanted to do. So really got to experience trying things out, failing, getting hurt, a lot of hard knocks that I value to this day, on that my dad was able to provide for me, and my mom for that matter.
When Elsa came from the Azores, she was 3 and her brother was, I believe, 9. So that was a culture shock for Carlos. Were you born in the Azores and came over too? How
I
old
was
were you?
actually born in Massachusetts, so I was only 2 years old when I came to California. So my brother, yep, next oldest brother, and I are the only 2 born in the U.S. Everyone else came over. Same culture shock, especially for my older brothers and sisters. Starting school here and the whole bit. And it's interesting though. Some of that same culture shock happened for me when I started school, because growing up very traditional, and there's a ton of Portuguese people here. We watched Portuguese TV and listened to Portuguese radio and only spoke Portuguese in the house. When I went to kindergarten, regardless of having older brothers and sisters, my English was really limited. So, in fact, I remained an English learner all the way through school, of having to prove that I could, speak English well. I was an English major, for crying out loud. But yeah, that part remained. As you know, I mean, you can kind of stay in this little Portuguese community on the East Coast or here, and never venture out too far if you don't want to.
Yeah, well, they came. Elsa's family came like in the late 60s, early 70s, and American culture at that time was like weird. So they're coming from no electricity and rural farm area to like Boston in the 70s. Just going to a grocery store or seeing the cars or hearing the music. I mean, that must have really been quite something. So
Sure. My dad always told this story that I thought was hilarious. They came over, and of course, at that time, just similar to what it is now, these immigrants are taking our jobs, type of thing. They all went into factory work. It was 1968 when they came over. They went into factory work. Obviously, weren't treated the best as Portuguese immigrants. But it was around Thanksgiving, and no Thanksgiving in Portugal. So,
right.
so as my dad had been working for about a week, and someone gave him a turkey, and he thought they were making fun of him.
Uh-huh.
And it's already snowing apparently at that point. He says he's walking home and he chucks it into the snow, and he's so pissed off that these people would treat him so badly. And he gets home to one of my other uncles. He says, no, that's for Thanksgiving. You're supposed to cook that. I said, well, I went back out to the snow. It was still there. So
That's hilarious. Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting your father, and he was a really great man, hard worker, and just loving to a T. Growing up in a big family like that, especially being younger, did you get picked on by your family, or just the outside kids in California?
I don't think I got picked on. I went to a very small school because we were out in the country. So, I mean, my graduating class, 8th grade, kindergarten to 8th grade, there was like 32 of us throughout. So it was a pretty small group. And so we all got along pretty well. But yes, having older brothers and sisters, and I'm the baby of the family. So I went from being the makeup doll for my sisters, and also for that matter, I still have pictures of when they used to decorate me, to chip teeth and being convinced that you could do ninja flips and all that sort of thing. So picked on is one thing, being led astray is another.
Yeah, that's hilarious. What was your turning moment to where you found your true identity and who you wanted to be? Because not many people grow up and say, gee, I hope I'm a superintendent someday.
Right.
But you had other things that you had to navigate. So when did your aha light bulb come on?
Um, I'm gonna go kind of far back here.
Okay, sure.
And not that this aha moment happened in kindergarten, but there's a very distinct thing that happened in kindergarten that impacted me later when I looked at becoming an educator. And it was, again, I told you my English wasn't very good when I started school. And they had, you walk into this kindergarten classroom, there's like 6 desks, in these little clusters. And above each of those clusters was a shape. There was the circle group and the square group and the triangle group and the diamond group, and you would think, and probably was, for the purpose of learning shapes and that sort of thing when you go into kindergarten. Well, I happened to be placed in the diamond group because there was a girl there that spoke Portuguese, and she was able to help me when I needed help for any type of translation. Well, it turns out that those shapes had more meaning than just learning shapes. They were the reading levels and the math levels, and how kids were divided up for how they were going to go to different centers. So, and I happened to be in the advanced reading group and the advanced language and the advanced math group only because this girl was translating for me. And when I later, when you start to realize what that means, as I started in my credentialing and that sort of thing, I thought, wow, I ended up in AP English and as an English major and all these things only by the simple grace of God that I was put in this group, because I'll tell you what, the kids in the square group, they remained English learners throughout. They never advanced in reading or math, so it's one of those things that those high expectations of our group, you just rise to the occasion when you're a kid. So that really impacted me from an educational standpoint. By high school, I started to realize kind of what had happened there, as I'm seeing my classmates start to fold and drop out in high school. And then me and that table of diamond kids that kind of just remained advanced throughout. So that had some impact on me. My older sister, Yvonne, when I was still in high school, she had started teaching. And, that familiarity of, oh, here's someone that I know. She was the first in our family to get a college degree. And, you just say, oh, well, she did it. I can do it.
Mhm.
And so I moved in and started to think that's the direction I wanted to move. I remember being in a couple of clubs in high school, one being through Rotary. They call it the Interact Club. It's the youth version of Rotary. I'm still a Rotarian to this day.
Mhm.
And what the superintendent of the school district at that time was the advisor for our Interact Club. And, we're having conversations. What do you want to do? I said, well, I want to sit in your seat one day. I remember telling him that, and then I did it, so that's kind of one of those, really cool things. But if I go into some life-changing stuff, and getting very personal here, in gosh, middle school, if not earlier, probably third, fourth grade, if I'm honest, having come from, again, a very traditional, very Catholic, family, I started to understand that I wasn't necessarily like the other kids and the other boys, but you kind of fight those things off, and thoughts and that sort of thing. What I'm talking about is that I started to realize that I was gay at that point. I have an older brother who is gay, who did not, he's 8 years older than me. He did not have a good coming out experience by any means. And so, I just figured keep my mouth shut. I'm not, this is never going to come to anything. And that's kind of what I did. So,
Can I ask you before?
sure.
Sorry to interrupt you
Yeah.
because I want to touch on that. How old was you? How old were you when your brother came out?
I'm going to say I was probably in 8th grade, maybe in 8th or 9th grade.
Okay, so about the time you were discovering your own sexuality and kind of having your own thoughts, he
Yep.
came out. And so I know the time frame to which you're talking, again, back in the 70s, 80s, and it wasn't a great time for people to come out and be gay,
Right.
especially in a heavy Catholic family.
For
So
sure.
you say your brother's coming out wasn't all that great. I imagine the struggles you were struggling with and then seeing that really had to play a part of you keeping veiled for a while.
No question. No question. And he, there was such a limited understanding at that time. It was during the AIDS era. Everyone just kind of figured, if you're gay, you have AIDS. This is a death sentence, and so there were so many misconceptions of what it was at that time. And obviously, for my family being traditional, but also a bit vain from a perspective. It's not, my mom and dad liked this sort of status, and that was an embarrassment to the family to have those things, if we're honest. And my brother was kicked out of the house and the whole bit. He doesn't go into it too much, but I do know there was that point where he was literally on the street. And then a friend of my dad's is the one who approached him and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I remember my dad going and getting him and bringing him home, and that healing process began. And my brother then entered the military, and so it was one of those things where, oh, the military will fix him. He won't be gay anymore. I think that's kind of what the family thought.
Yeah.
And so, but again, for me, this stuff's just all spinning like, okay, that is not the route I want to take. And so it did ingrain in me, whether people saw it or not, in my own head. It's like, no one's going to ever know this about me. And so it did. It absolutely impacted me. Still does. If I'm
Did you
honest.
try to date and try to mask it with, living a quote unquote normal male adolescent?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously through high school and that sort of thing, girlfriends and prom dates and all that sort of typical stuff. In college, college, kind of the same thing. One of the things that really had a big impact on me is I went into college, straight into a junior college after high school. And and then I got this job at a casino, an Indian casino here, and it was one of the first ones that had opened. And we were making money hand over fist. There were people coming from the Bay Area and LA because it was one of the few play. And I was dealing Texas Hold'em and blackjack and pie gal and all that sort of thing. And to be honest, at that age, at 21, 22 years old, I was making more money than I ever was going to make as a teacher, And so I dropped out of college and went and worked for about 3 years. Well, during that time that I was there, met a girl. We moved in together. Great girl, the whole bit. But living, and especially in that world, living a very closeted life. Obviously, not only am I with her and she works at the casino, but the clientele and that sort of, my bosses, all of that stuff, that would never, ever have been okay. So that's all good and fine, this great girl. But within about a year and a half, I met a guy. And so I'm now in this, complete lie where I'm dating a guy and have this girlfriend that I live with. And it's really not me. I kind of look at myself as being a pretty good person, but in your 20s, you make really, really, really poor choices. And that was one of the ones that I made. And
well, we're all looking for love and acceptance, and when we're not getting it from our family, especially a family that is family oriented, like, and then you see how someone in your family who was similar to you was treated, it doesn't leave a lot of space for being honest. It doesn't leave a lot of space for not living a lie.
Right.
And, so did you ever talk to your brother about it?
I didn't, because number one, he was in the military during that time. So, so he, and he went as far as he could go. I mean, he literally loved being stationed in Alaska. He went to Egypt. He was in, one of the Gulf Wars. I don't remember which one. Iraqi Freedom, one of the ones he was part of. And so not only was there that distance, there wasn't a comfort level of speaking about that, because I couldn't have him knowing, because I guess I didn't trust that everyone else would know as well.
Yeah.
And
well,
so,
and he had to live a lie too. Don't ask,
for sure.
don't tell was huge at that time. Like, so you both are having to live this lie. So there is no boundary of trust for either of you, really. So,
and I don't even know that don't ask, don't tell existed yet. During that part, I think he would have been removed, or discharged for that. So, but when one of the kind of aha moments, wake up moment for me was while I was working at the casino. The road that goes up there, it's up in the hills. It was a terrible road, and I had already decided I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to work here anymore. I'm going to go back to college. This is all bad, and I'm just kind of feeling sorry for myself. And at that point, the girl and the guy had found out about each other. Right? And she was so amazing. She didn't say a word. She didn't say anything to anybody at work. She did quit. And but she, for other reasons, she was going to start in her career as well. But at that point, everything was just in this weird spin of things were terrible. And anyway, that road finally caught up with me, and I was on my way to work, and was working graveyard shifts and was always tired and living this terrible life from a perspective of, nothing good comes out of working at a casino, in all honesty, and all of these layers of the life you're living in your 20s. And so I was driving up and had a really major car accident. And when I finally, kind of came to, I was obviously knocked out and that sort of thing in the crash. When I woke up, I started realizing what was going on. I assumed this had to 100% be me that caused this. I know how fast I drive. I know how sleepy I used to get on the road. I thought this has to be, and it was pretty awful situation. We hit head on, and this young girl, 19 years old, was ejected from her car, and
Mm,
she's literally right outside of my window, and I'm pinned in my car, and I can't get out, but I can see her. And it was, because we were up in the mountains, and because it took a while for anyone to arrive, certainly much longer for EMS to arrive. And that amount of time, I watched that girl take her last breath and struggle
mm,
for breath and die right in front of me.
mm.
Um, anyway, um,
And thinking
so
you had done it.
absolutely thinking I had done it.
Wow.
EMS arrived pretty quickly, and they got to work on her and me for that matter. I had pretty severe injuries too. But they covered me with this yellow sheet because they had to cut into the car and they were sawing. So my view of what they were doing with her kind of ended pretty quickly because different teams kind of working. Um, and as soon as that sheet went over me, this was now 35-40 minutes into this thing. um, I just sobbed. I know you're in shock in those things, but at that point I thought I was just a wreck and just begging God to just let this girl live and fix this, and
Mhm.
all these promises that you make in those situations. I'm going to be a better person. I'll go back to school. I'm going to do all these things. Just please, 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 please fix this. Um, and in my and the thing that really bothers me about the whole situation is I felt like I deserve. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I deserve this. This is my
Mhm.
punishment for
Mhm.
living this life that I'm living.
Yeah.
Um, and I came to find out the accident wasn't ended up not being my fault. The girl was passing on a blind curve, and she hit me head on. There was another vehicle that she was passing that stopped, and so that was all confirmed, but it didn't make it better. It really didn't make it better because all I did was then second guess. Well, maybe if I would have been more alert, maybe
And
if I
yet
wouldn't have been going so fast.
survivor's guilt set in. You were already beating yourself up. You already had the guilt, and then she made it why her, why not me?
Right.
So, the survivor's guilt. You said that another car stopped.
Mhm.
They couldn't help her while they stopped?
But the only thing, and again, you recall things as a little shaky at that point, and it could have been 2 minutes. You know, it felt like probably 10. Nobody was there. No, and I don't know if they were calling at that point, calling the police from their vehicle or whatever the case may be. There was no one on the scene for a pretty significant amount of time.
Hmm.
And who knows? I mean, who knows the justification or the reason why those people didn't get out immediately or whatever the case may be. They were not involved in the accident, so it certainly wasn't an injury or anything like that. But it could have just been a comfort level. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, it's been over 30 years, and you can still tell when you tell the story that you still experience some of the guilt.
Mhm.
Are you dealing with it a little better, or
Yes, certainly the guilt part of it because I didn't immediately get to work on those promises
Hmm,
that I made, but I have pretty much, now in 30 years, done everything I promised I was going to do.
well, that's all.
Um, and so that kind of gives me that level of comfort of something good came out of this. And I didn't miraculously get better. It's one of those things. I promised I was going to go back to college. I promised all these things. Well, I ended up getting a pretty significant settlement out of the accident. And what did I do? I opened a bar. I opened a bar and restaurant with it. My family comes from the restaurant business, and
Yeah.
or parts of my family do. And so I thought, I'll try my hand at this. So that ended up being another 4 years of not the best living, but the difference in that case was I was a partner in the business, but now it's mine. The restaurant business and nightclub type of business, there's a little bit more freedom from a perspective of wanting to be yourself.
Hmm.
And so the fear of being out kind of subsided. And that's when I met my partner, not my current partner, but my partner at the time. And had enough of a comfort level that, okay, this person's coming into my life. And he had a daughter. And so things were coming at me fast. Like, oh, this is a package deal. This comes with, a lot of layers here. And it was wonderful. I mean, it was absolutely wonderful to be able to have that experience of being able to be a stepdad and all of the fantastic stuff that comes along with that.
That is a windy road, because most get to be a stepdad with the female partner.
Right.
And you traversed to get to be a stepdad with your male partner, which is like even another twist and turn to life.
Absolutely.
How long till you actually came out to your family?
So that happened pretty quickly. After I met this guy, I think my family at that point had a pretty good understanding. Okay, something up here, but I never, still to this day, have ever had a conversation with my father or my mother about being gay. I never
Really?
came out to the family. I did finally talk to my gay brother and say, hey, and just kind of as a respect level to, I know what you went through. And, but with the rest of my family, it just kind of became, it's Easter. I'm bringing this guy and his daughter over for Easter. And it was, okay. I mean, that was it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And I look at that now, what a blessing that is, that unfortunately my brother had to go through hell to some degree to get there. But to have and don't get me wrong, I don't think my mom and dad loved that I was gay, but they were accepting of the fact that this is our kid and this is a good man that he's met. And my God, he was in my life for 17 years, almost 18
Wow.
years,
Do you think they learned from the the mistakes they made with your brother, and the fact that you didn't come out and make them talk about it? You just kind of went about living life. It kind of eased it on both sides.
I think so. I think I made it easier for them that I wasn't going to harp on this, that being gay isn't and has never been my identity. It's not what I'm going to carry a flag for type of thing. It just is. And so I think that made it a bit easier for them and for the whole family. But I got to tell you, and I spoke about this when I gave the eulogy at my dad's funeral. How my family acted and especially my father, I could not have asked for better. I really could not have asked for a more loving and accepting to this day. There are still little things that my mom will do every once in a while that make me cringe.
Yeah.
When in fact, when I divorced my ex, she goes, do you think you might try girls this time? And I said, Mom, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom, but no.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't know. I have a background in psychology, so I think on the mental terms, and it's really kind of frustrating for me. And I'm, a straight guy, but it's frustrating to me that people want to label. Like, I don't really give a shit that anyone's gay, right?
Right.
No more than they give a shit that I'm heterosexual. And I've met your current partner. You guys are great men. You are solid, loving, caring, giving people. Who gives a crap if you're gay or straight? And that just frustrates the crap out of me that we still have to label people. I want to know, do you have integrity? Do you have a good heart? Do you have love to give? Not, are you gay? Like, quite frankly, if with the divorce rate of heterosexuals, if gay people want to be a part of that too, then who gives a
Yeah,
shit, right? If
you're
you
absolutely
guys want to
right.
make each other miserable too, then go ahead. Like it's
Yeah. And you know, that kind of became my philosophy on being a gay leader. I mean, when I look at it, I'm from this small town, Hanford, California. The Central Valley here is kind of the Midwest of California. It is
yeah.
a very conservative area. Um, and to be an out gay superintendent of the school district
Hmm.
is something I never thought would have happened. In fact, I mentioned to you how I became somewhat comfortable being out when I was in the restaurant business. I went right deep back into that closet the minute I went into education. So
Mhm.
while I was in the restaurant, I finished my degree and said, okay, you know, this restaurant thing's not for me. And so as soon as that lease was up, I was done, and I went straight into the classroom. Well, at that point, you know, I'm like this. Even as a teacher,
Mhm.
this is not something I can talk about. So I actually took a job in a neighboring town
Mm.
to kind of keep a little bit of distance, you know, not quite far enough, but it worked for the most part, you know, and I went right back into the closet. And then as I progressed pretty quickly. I was only a teacher for 5 years. And I went straight into a dean position and became a principal, all those things very, very quickly. Well, as I progressed upward, that fear became even more, you know, important, because I knew I wanted to land in the superintendent role. I thought there's no chance that's ever going to happen for an openly gay guy.
Mhm.
And on the unfortunate part of that is my my partner at the time and my stepdaughter, they bore the brunt of now, hey, you know, you got, when I give graduation speeches, you guys can't be there. You know, when we're at the grocery store, you know, we have these weird, like, you go that way, I go that way. And here's this poor little girl. You know what I mean?
Oh
When I
wow.
look at that part of this, one of my biggest regrets is not having the balls to do what I needed to do to be a good father to this kid and to give the example of strength. And so that part I really struggle with, but it's you know, and things obviously got better, but that relationship ended, you know, and all those things, any problems that we had, they really stemmed from, well, I mean, we moved to Clovis, which is an hour away, so that, you know, they could have their life there and I have my life here, you know, sort of
Mhm.
thing. And there was never a connection to my work with them. They didn't come to barbecues. They didn't come to any staff parties. It was um, just one of those things that really, it really took its toll to the point where, you know, I had achieved a lot of things. I told you that I mentioned in that car as I was making promises. I got my master's degree, I got a doctorate, I just, you know, kept going and working hard to do all the things. I was in an administrative role. All of these things had kind of come into play, and it all should have felt right.
Mhm.
But because of those other circumstances, I was, I had tanked. You know, psychologically, I had absolutely tanked and had, um, I mean, things just got bad, really, really bad. I mean, not only was the relationship ending, I had progressed to the next layer of job. I was an assistant superintendent because that's just the next step. It's one of those things you do. Well, it was a terrible job. It was terrible.
Mhm.
I sat at a desk, I did compliance documents and reports and all this stuff. I had no connection to kids anymore. I had no, and that sank me even farther. And honestly, you know, the relationship ended. I thought I was going to now have no connection to my daughter, because
Mhm.
what is the connection? There's no biological connection. She's,
Mhm.
you know, this ends, it ends with her. And by now she's in, you know, graduated high school, so she can make her own decisions. But that was my fear is, wow, I lose this, I lose all of it.
Mhm.
And so anyway, things just kept sinking and sinking and sinking. And you know, I recently did a speech, and for the first time ever, to a group of people, I talked about this, but I got, it got so bad that the only thing I thought I needed to do was just leave this planet,
Mhm.
um, and that's, I say I'm a pretty happy person. I had never felt depression. I had never felt any of those things, but in that moment, the life I had lived, the people I had hurt, coupled with now, even if I'm comfortable coming out, these people I've worked with for the last 16 years, I'm now going to be exposed as a liar.
Mhm.
I didn't trust you enough, to know my story. And here I am, I'm a leader, I'm a school leader. I'm asking you to follow me. I'm asking you to do these things. Trust me, type of thing. And so all of those things coupled, it just, I got to that point where I had a full-on plan of what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, to where I wouldn't embarrass my family would never know. It was an accident type of thing that was going to happen. I had started hiking a lot, and built up the story and built up all of the ways this was going to happen. And thankfully, through, mentioned I was a Rotarian. It was some Rotary Club members in my Rotary Club that, in fact, one in particular, I show up to a meeting and he says, Victor, whatever this is, whatever it is, it gets better. And I thought, holy crap, because I'm thinking nobody is
Yeah.
seeing this side.
Yeah.
Obviously they were. Um, and so, and he took it to that next step. And to me, this is true friendship and leadership. We those meetings are about an hour at lunchtime. I go back to my office and he texts me and he's like, you have a minute, and then I called him and he says, why don't you come by my office? I said, well, I've got a couple of meetings, but I'll come by. And I go to his office and he confides in me in a couple of things. And um, that was that beginning, that opening of this sort of light, like, okay, this one gesture
Yeah.
that a colleague, friend and colleague made, um, that got me to that point of being okay. And within months, a couple of months, I came out at work, and this was in my old district. Um, and it wasn't terrible. Most people, as you would imagine, they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, kind of knew.
Yeah.
We kind of knew."
Yeah. 17 years of not dating anybody, we kind of guessed.
Absolutely. And so, you live this charade, and I apologized left and right to everybody and they understood. They for the most part got it. But right about that same time, I was doing kind of the side work stuff in San Diego for Avid. It's an educational program, and I was a trainer. And I had been going for 8, 9 years doing these summer trainings. Well, happened to be at one of those summer trainings. I was at the gym, and this super hot looking guy's there, and I I go talk to him. I was like, well, what are you doing, sort of thing. And I could tell there was some interest, and asked him out, and it happened. That's my current husband. And he, unlike me, being, even when I'm out, I'm still I'm pretty conservative
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my stuff. He's not that he's out and like flamboyant much, but he's very, very comfortable. He makes no bones about it. He'll beat your ass if you say something, type of thing. Because
Yeah. Well, he's more flamboyant than you are, that's for sure.
he absolutely is, especially in his dress. That's for sure.
Yeah.
He likes expensive shoes. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But he made no bones about it, and um, he pushed me in that direction of, oh, we're not going to be together if you think I'm going to stay home when we go to football games for stuff, or if you think, I'm not riding, back of the bus on this
Yeah.
situation. And he pushed me really, really hard, and I started to realize, wait a minute, here we are again, this small town vibe. Here we are at a football game, this couple, and parents are just like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And my staff, and just, and don't get me wrong, I don't kid myself that everybody loves this, so that everyone's okay with it. but we're in a pretty dang accepting community considering how conservative we really are. And I layer that from a leadership perspective of, I told you, I don't wear, being gay on my sleeve. It is not my platform. To me, I'm going to be the absolute best leader I can be. I'm going to prove to you that you should like me. I'm going to prove how hard I'm going to work. And to me, that is the advocacy piece on the gay side that I wish more people did.
Yeah.
Rather than beating the drum of, no, you have to accept me just because. Saying, no, I don't. I don't have to accept anybody just because.
Right.
But I tell you what, if you're a good person and you're a hard worker and you're doing great things for the community, makes it really hard for me not to.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've chosen to live. And that's, with John, my husband, I tell him, we work hard. We are very active in Rotary. We're very active on an educational foundation. I'm on a bunch of different boards. We are at stuff, it feels like 3 or 4 nights a week, all the time. But that is what's moving the needle of acceptance and caring and all of those, and kindness, in all honesty. And to me, that helps so much more. And people still say things that shock me sometimes. But the heart is there. I can feel, I know you care about me, and so that has, from a leadership perspective, when I look at being an authentic leader, which I now can honestly say I am, to being inauthentic before, because my philosophy wasn't different. It's just how when you're living this charade, can you expect people to really buy into what you're doing and what you're saying? Because whether I thought they knew or they didn't, most of them knew.
Yeah. It's funny because we put on this veil, as you call it, right? And we think it's a cloak. We think it's a Harry Potter cloak where, whoop, no one can see us.
Exactly.
It's not. It's just a veil that we're living behind, but people can still see through the veil. Like, we put it on and it blinds our own light. It doesn't stop what other people are seeing. And it's unfortunate that you lived so many years behind that veil because of the circumstances. But you grew as an individual and a human, and you decided that I'm going to lead with my heart, not my label. And that makes you an even better leader, because you are leading from your heart. And I know both you and John have huge giving, loving hearts, and you go out of your way to make sure that you're a servant leader, not someone who just stands there and says, follow me. You are right there on the front lines with your people doing the things necessary. So that's what I think makes you unique and successful.
It goes a long way. I remind, obviously, I have a team of 25 administrators that I work with, and about 500 employees. But when I'm coaching administrators, I really, really look for those components of, here we are, we're doing this staff barbecue. Who's willing to pick up the trash? Who's willing to, lift tables? And who's the person who's like, that's below me? And tell you what, those people who think that that's below them, they don't last with me for very long, because from the Portuguese community, we're pretty hard workers, and there's this layer of having to prove something, sometimes to our own detriment, of I'm going to work until I have a heart attack to prove that I'm a good person, type of thing. But that servant part, as you mentioned, that has always been key to me. And it's difficult when you kind of reach the top of your organization, for someone like me to forget my status. I should say I often forget my status, because I don't look at any of the 500 people I work with as anything other than colleagues.
Right.
So I get myself in trouble sometimes from a standpoint, I'm having this conversation, or I'm just having this discussion of, wouldn't it be cool if we do this? And all of a sudden it's all hands on deck to make it happen. I'm like, wait, we were just talking, type thing. And so you forget those, and that's something I've really had to work hard on. And my staff is now starting to understand, okay, that's just Victor, that's just how he is. And but to me, it's absolutely valuable. It absolutely, when it comes to that point, I'll use COVID as an example. I hadn't been in my role for very long when COVID hit, but I had already established a relationship with my team of caring, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do for you, that when it came time to make some of those tough decisions, we were able to do it from a team approach and really look at it like, I'm not telling you what to do. We are deciding what we're going to do. And it really went a long way. I look at that from a leadership perspective all the time. You can get almost anything you want out of your team if they have that level of respect and they know that you'll do the same.
Absolutely. If they know you're going to be hands-on with them, and that you treat them with the level of respect of a person, not a number, you can get people, when I was helping my buddy build his first couriers business, I was an account manager, and so I would, deal with the people all the time, and he would shadow me once in a while just to see how, the accounts are running. And we'd walk out of places and he's like, how can you talk to them the way you do and get away with it? It's like, because I built a rapport and they know that if they need be, I'm going to be right there with them. It's bought me a level of freedom to talk freely to them, right? and talk with them, not at them. And, I think authenticity goes a long way. A couple quick questions. How's your relationship with your daughter?
It's strong. I don't see her as much as I would like, but I'm one of those, she and I have a very good understanding of, we don't need to see each other every week to love each other,
Yeah.
and in fact, she's one of those millennials. And so it's one of those things, it's a text is just fine.
Yeah.
But I've got two grandkids in the mix now. And so, we share photos and we see each other fairly often. But it's good. It's a really good thing. And my relationship with my ex, her father, is really good. So
Nice.
it's one of those things that kind of helps. It took a while to get there, if we're honest, but it's good. And she has a great husband, and they come over again, not as often as I'd like, because those grandkids are super fun, but it's good. Thank you for asking.
That's a blessing that you're able to still have that, and it shows that blood does not make family, love makes family.
It does.
Authenticity goes a long way for any successful people, and you were at your low because you weren't being authentic. How do you see your relationship with your staff? Because how you treated them didn't change, but you changed. So how did you see the dynamic with your staff change once you became authentic in who you truly were?
Well, there's two things coupled there, because I changed districts shortly after I came out. I came out in my old district, and staff was wonderful. My team was fantastic. They really were. But a year later, here I am now superintendent in the neighboring district. So I was a new face, this is where I grew up, but I was a new face to this team. And when the board hired me, I said, hey, you know what you're getting, right? And I said, I won't be offended. I won't be offended if you guys change your mind. They're like, no, we know exactly what you're going to be able to do for us. And so, I felt comfortable there. And from day one, with this team, that now it's been 4 years I've been here in this district, I never hid any of it. I mean, John came with me to the absolute first event. He came with me to the board meeting when I was sworn in. And I told myself I'm never doing what I did before, ever again. John wouldn't let me, if we're being
Well,
honest,
yeah.
he wouldn't let me do that. But that's where that authenticity piece comes from. And especially in the beginning, we have a lot of gay staff members and that sort of thing. And so there were so many people that would kind of confide in, thank you, thank you for kind of showing what things can be.
Mhm.
And you're right that the feeling was so different coming into a new place with absolutely nothing to hide. That true authenticity of, like it or not, this is what I am.
Mhm.
You still have to prove yourself. You're a new leader. You have to do all of those things. But I look back at my old team in my previous district, and those relationships are still good, but I still feel myself cowering a little bit whenever I'm in situations where I'm around them, because I still feel bad
Mhm.
about that time frame.
Yeah. Well, and I call myself a Reformed Catholic, and growing up in a strict Catholic family, we're good at riding that guilt train. I often joke, there's TripAdvisor, and then there's my mom, who's Guilt TripAdvisor. You just, so I understand your level of hesitancy too, because it's something that was kind of ingrained in you, even subconsciously. And we've got to reprogram that, and that takes a while, because it took a while to get it in. So
For sure.
I'm sure over time that will lessen as well. And the more John pushes you to just stand in your truth, the easier that'll be. So what's on the horizon for Victor Rosa?
Well, on the short list is a little bit of travel this summer, and so really looking forward to that. I've started doing a lot more speaking engagements and emceeing things. For some reason, people seem to like my voice, and so I kind of do a lot of different fundraisers and things like that. And I'm really liking that component of it. I really enjoy talking to people and sharing, whether it's from a leadership perspective or whatever the case may be, doing a lot of that. So I don't know where that'll lead. I don't 100%, know if that's necessarily a next step. I am very comfortable in the role that I have, to where, as long as my board will have me and things don't go south, I could see myself finishing out my career here very easily, and then retiring into probably teaching some college classes. That's what I don't ever want to just sit at home. So
No.
so those are the kind of next step things, but I don't limit myself. You never really know. People have approached me about political things and stuff like that. I'm like, oh God, that's just a whole other layer of things I don't want to touch. But that's yeah, on the short list, it's just really becoming really sharing that authenticity more, and helping young leaders kind of get to the point of being able to be great leaders. And so that's my push right now.
I think by the time this airs, it'll be heading close into 2024. And I think that's going to be a time where your true authenticity in that speaking. I know when I started this platform, I had no idea that I would enjoy the communication and the interviews that I do with people. And I've met some great people with great stories, but it's also helped get me on stages and do more public speaking. And I've loved that. And then of course the coaching, aspect of it. So we plan our life, and then God throws a twist in, and then we're using those past things that we thought were trauma as stepping stones into our future of greatness. And I just see that as you continue to share your story and share that that time period, you stepping into this new thing of greatness. For some reason, and maybe someone's told you this before, but for some reason I see a book coming from you somewhere.
you know uh, Believe it or not, I've always wanted to write, but never about myself, never about my I would really like to get into some detailed stories of my family's history from a perspective of um, overcoming adversity and all of those sort of things. My mom's one of 9 sisters, Elsa's
Mhm.
mom was one of my
Mhm.
mom's sisters. And so um, I look at that component of God, an interwoven kind of Ken Follett, gigantic version of the story of those 9 women. Well,
Mhm.
8 women, one guy.
Yeah.
And what they went through from Portugal to the US to kind of, I would really like to dive into that. And you have to embellish a little bit, but man, if you just hear the
Yeah.
true stories of what they went through, it's just mind-boggling to me. It's
Well,
mind-boggling the strength and tenacity
yeah.
of these people who
Well, and I've been lucky enough to be immersed in it for only 8 years.
uh,
And the stories that I've heard from the time they came over and what they had to deal with while they were over there, and your one aunt who came here and was responsible for the other 8 coming here. I mean, there's a layer after layer after layer of stories. And, I know your folks did extremely well, but I look at Elsa's parents, neither of them ever spoke English,
right.
ever. They bought and sold multiple houses. They worked for General Electric for years and built this amazing life for themselves. And I see these 2 immigrants that brought their 2 young children to a strange country, not even speaking the language, and succeeding and overcoming time after time after time after time. And then you hear all the family stories, like, Christmas, we basically do a pub crawl in the neighborhood of our
Right.
family.
Right. It
Right.
used to be wonder. I used to have such a good time with
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it is, I think you would do well to write that, put it pen and paper, and it's a fascinating story of triumph.
It
And
is.
all of your family has done pretty well from themselves in this country.
Absolutely. And especially that initial immigrant generation.
Mhm.
Um, and then the first generation after. And then, you start to, I mean, not to put out there, but I'm gonna say, then you start to get a little Americanized with that next generation. And there isn't that same level of tenacity. There isn't that same level of drive and resilience. You mentioned Elsa's parents coming with her and her brother Carlos. I think about my mom at a very young age. She was 14, no, 15 years old when she got married. And my dad 17, losing a 5-year-old child and then losing their daughter and then 5 more kids in tow that you are bringing to the US without having any idea what you're getting into.
Mhm.
It's just unfathomable to me that can even occur. Um,
Well, and
and
they all came at a time where you actually had to petition and you had
correct,
to wait. Like, I know Elsa's family couldn't come for a couple years because they didn't have certain things in place to come. So
right,
you're doing what you need to over in the old country. You're waiting, you're hoping, and it's just
yeah,
mind-boggling, the tenacity, like you
and
said.
pain
Oh,
to come over. I mean,
yeah,
it was a little different. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What's one favorite tenacious story that you grew up hearing and just still love today?
Oh boy. Um, you know, I I'll 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 use one from my dad. That's fairly recent, and to me it tells a story of a truly dedicated, hardworking man. So my father passed away about a little over a year and a half now, and um, he was 84. At 80, my mom calls me and says, um, your dad's upset with you. And I said, why? She goes, well, you didn't call him. I said, what was I supposed to call him about? Well, he got hurt. I said, oh, well, I didn't know he got hurt, Mom. How am I supposed to know he got hurt? She goes, you didn't see it on the Facebook? And I said, No, Mom, that's not how Facebook works. There's not a camera that's following Dad around. If nobody says he got hurt, then none of the rest of us know he got hurt, Mom. And so I said, how did he get hurt? And she said, well, he was roofing Tia Rosa, which is one of the other sisters' house, and he fell off the roof. And I said, what the hell is he doing on a roof? Roofing this house, She said, well, she doesn't have a lot of money, and she is a widow at that point, and she needed the house roofed, and he said he would do it for her. Well, she lived in a 2-story house, Daryl. I mean, that was a
Yeah,
2-story home.
I've been there. Yeah.
When you were here. And he fell off the 1-story section, but still. So anyway, he didn't break anything, but he was pretty bruised up, and he couldn't finish the job. My nephew and brother-in-law went over to finish the work. And my dad, at that point, my dad had removed wood shakes off this entire house by himself. He took up 4x8 sheets of OSB and basically new plywood on the entire structure, and had roofed over 3/4 of the house with new shingles before he fell. I mean, he's 80. He's 80. He was taking full sheets up a ladder by himself and bundles of roof by himself. And I talked about that as funeral, like, my God, what a testament to that servant part of your aunt needed this help.
Yeah.
I can still do it. I'm going to do it. And then just the actual physical strength of this little 5'8", 5'7", my dad was, man, able to do that. I can't carry a sheet of plywood up a ladder onto a roof, and I'm pretty strong.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is, not that it's a historical story, but it tells so much about what he overcame and the type of person that any challenge that would have come his way, he would have survived it,
Yeah. Well, and the knowing your father, he did it because he gave his word that he was going to.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
in and of itself was the underlying, I said, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to do it. Right.
Right.
I'm going to share with you my favorite story from Elsa's, because they overcame a tremendous amount, but her father loved this country beyond measure and was grateful for the life that it gave his family. 4th of July was like, he loved it, but he loved Christmas. Like, the Griswolds had nothing on what he used to put out for decorations. But my favorite story about him was when he was trying to get his citizenship, because his wife had gone and got her citizenship, and he wasn't an educated man because he had to go to work in the fields as a young boy. So he never finished beyond 3rd grade or whatever. Didn't speak any English, couldn't write or read Portuguese because he never went to school, but spoke it fluently. So he didn't write English or Portuguese, couldn't read English or Portuguese, but went to work in the factory and made a tremendous life for his family. But so he couldn't pass the citizenship test because he couldn't read it, and he couldn't write it. And he went 11 times, and Elsa and Carlos would work after school to help him memorize the questions so that he could, pass. And after the 11th time, he had a piece of paper in his hand, and Carlos was with him, and the agent, who had seen him already 10 other times, said, what's the paper in his hand? And Carlos told the man, he already knows he can't pass, and that's his application for the 12th time.
Wow.
And the man looked at Antonio, and he told Carlos to tell him, write, I forget what phrase it was he was supposed to write. He couldn't do that, but on the piece of paper, he wrote, "I love America." And
Ah,
the guy stamped him and gave him his citizenship.
that's fantastic.
I mean, again, the tenacity and the heart and the just absolute, I'm going to do whatever it takes. Like he already knew he wasn't going to pass, but that man took his heart because I love America was all this man could utter. And there was no reason to deny him.
Absolutely. That's
So,
fantastic. I had never heard that one, Daryl. That's fantastic.
yeah. But that says a lot about you and your family, and you know, it permeates the heart that you all have. And I'm honored to be a part of that and blessed. I ask every guest this one last final question. What does a warrior spirit mean to Victor Rosa?
Um, I think my word of the year and probably ongoing for a little while is resilience. And it's something that I'm pushing from a standpoint of what we need to work with students on and what we need to work with each other on. We've really, really entered a phase from the workforce down to students of um, every trauma then which everyone has something, has resulted in an inability to move on and move forward. And um, I've never lived my life that way. And so you try to bottle, okay, what's different? What causes or what creates that resilience in a person to always want to move forward and move past? And I don't know if there's a bottling to it, but there needs to be a better understanding. And to me, that if you think true warrior, that is what it's all about. It is all about being able to overcome what's out there and any task that comes your way and that resiliency to do so. So that's it for me. That really is it. If I can get a few more of these kids and a few more staff members to understand that this barrier, or this no, that's the other big thing. It's like it's always a no. I say no, it's a no right now.
Mm-hmm.
A no right now. It can turn into a yes.
Absolutely.
But that power's in your hands to make that. And so, that's it. That's my warrior word, I guess.
I like it. I would encourage you because all of my interviews that I've done are out on my YouTube page, a Warrior Spirit YouTube page. And I would encourage you to go through a few of those and show some of those stories to your kids and your leaders, because every story, just like yours, shows that resilience to overcome and to take I told you when we started this, take the mess, make it your message, and it can be a survival guide for somebody else. And
Absolutely.
over and over and over again, I've heard those stories to where that's absolutely true. So true resilience is out there. And I think, like you said, we all have a story. What I love about the coaching and the podcasting, the more people share that story, the more they heal. And the more they heal, the more they blossom into that authenticity that we talked about before. So I would encourage you to go take a look at a few of those and see if some of them, don't work for you. But I've appreciated this time with you. I love it. And, tell John I said hello and thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you very much, Darrell. I appreciate it. I will certainly tell them. Looking forward to seeing you guys again soon.
All righty. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.